Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Smackdown review. Smackdown tonight was from the First Horizon Coliseum in Greensboro, North Carolina. And Smackdown tonight, I thought it was a decent show in my opinion. Smackdown, of course, in my opinion, is the worst WWE show of the week. I think, Raw and NXT are the better shows. But Smackdown, with it being 3 hours, it's just absolutely boring at points, though. But tonight, it was a decent show. We had Money in the Bank qualifying matches. We had Alexa Bliss versus Chelsea Green and Michin. This was a triple threat Money in the Bank qualifying match. Aleister Black was in action, and he had taken on Carmelo Hayes once again. Rinse and repeat. We had a triple threat Money in the Bank qualifying match for the men. It was Sikoa versus Fenix and Jim Uso. We had the in-ring debut of Jeff Cobb. And WWE has changed Jeff Cobb's name. Now they're calling him JC Mateo. I guess they couldn't get maybe like the copyright to use Cobb's last name. Who knows? But we all know WWE loves to change stars' names, and they love to change their music for no apparent reason whatsoever. So he made his debut match tonight against LA Knight. And the main event, we had the Women's Championship on the line, where Tiffany Stratton defended the title against Nia Jax. Oh boy. But overall, SmackDown, decent show it was tonight. Wasn't terrible. It obviously wasn't a great show by any means, though. But anyway, let's jump right into the review. SmackDown opened up tonight with Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, and Jeff Cobb, or as they are now calling him, JC Mateo. So they made their way down to the ring. So Sikoa, he had a mic in hand, and the fans there in Greensboro were all for Jacob Fatu. They were chanting his name. Sikoa ended up saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, please help and welcome the man who kept the U.S. Championship in this family. His man, JC," to which he was referring to Jeff Cobb, or JC Mateo. So ended up saying that when Roman lost to Cody at WrestleMania, he ruined everything and lost everything for his family. He ended up going to say that changes with him win Money in the Bank and then win the title and bring it back where it belongs. He ended up saying that if anyone in the back has a problem, they need to deal with JC. So Jacob Fatu then grabbed the mic from Sikoa. You can tell that there are little seeds being planted for WWE to maybe turn Jacob Fatu babyface. And a possible match with Jacob Fatu and Sikoa at some point, whenever that happens. So Fatu got on the mic. He ended up saying, "Let's keep it one, honey, and not to get it twisted." He ended up telling Sikoa that he will do with or without him and line everyone up. And at the end of the day, he is all gas and no brakes. So Sikoa then stopped Fatu. He ended up telling Fatu that the reason he is doing all this is because that he loves him. He then ended up telling Fatu to look at his shoulder, and that this is proof he loves Fatu. Sikoa then ended up asking Fatu about the thing he used to tell him all the time, to which Fatu ended up saying, "I love you, Solo." So Sikoa ended up telling Fatu that is not it, and that he used to say, I love you, Solo. What, he used to say it loud and proud. So Sikoa then ended up pushing on Fatu and ended up asking Fatu who he loves and how did he used to say it. So this led to LA Knight end up coming out. And I'm like, are we still having LA Knight feud with Jacob Fatu and Sol Sikoa? Can we please move on? Please? So Knight ended up coming from the crowd. He took out JC Mateo, Jeff Cobb, and ended up running through the crowd. And pretty much that was basically that. But overall, this was a decent opening to SmackDown here. Sol Sikoa getting on the mic saying, oh, Jacob Fatu kept the United States Championship in this family. And thanks to his man, JC. So then, Fatu, grabbing the mic from Sol Sikoa, snatching it out of Sikoa's hand. So, like I said, you could tell that there are little seeds being planted for Jacob Fatu's babyface turn. And then we saw Michin and B-Fab. Surprised that B-Fab still has a job in WWE after the releases that they did. And I'm like, yeah, Pretty Deadly, B-Fab, they're still here. So Michin and B-Fab, they were talking about Money in the Bank. They got interrupted by Chelsea Green and the Secret Hervis and Piper Niven and Alba Fire. Alexa Bliss randomly is there, and she kept saying to Michin and Chelsea Green, see you out there. To which B-Fab ended up telling Chelsea that the Secret Hervis in Piper Niven and Alba Fire are no longer welcome during the match. They were barred from ringside. Same with B-Fab. So Piper Niven, Alba Fire, and B-Fab were barred from ringside for the Money in the Bank qualifying match. So pretty much that was that. Then we had the first match, Women's Triple Threat Money in the Bank qualifying match, Chelsea Green versus Alexa Bliss versus Michin. This was a solid match here. I like how we are now getting to Money in the Bank qualifying matches and building towards Money in the Bank, which is one of my favorite PLEs. Always love Money in the Bank. Every year I get, a little excited to see who is going to win the Money in the Bank briefcase for the men and the women. And they could cash in the briefcase anytime and anywhere, any place. So the match got underway. We had Michin end up delivering a kick to Chelsea, and Chelsea ended up rolling to the floor. Alexa Bliss and Michin end up locking up. Before they locked up, they end up applauding that Michin ended up taking out Chelsea Green from the start of the match here. So Bliss and Michin locked up. Bliss ended up taking Michin down. She ran the ropes, and she tripped up Chelsea, who ended up in the ring. Bliss ended up rolling up Michin, and Michin ended up kicking out. Michin then ended up rolling up Bliss, to which Bliss ended up kicking out. Bliss and Michin end up trading more near falls, something that I say is so stupid and pointless. I hate when they do that near fall after near fall after near fall shit. So Michin and Bliss both drop kicked Chelsea to keep her from coming into the ring. Michin and Bliss end up going to the outside to send Chelsea Green back into the ring. Michin and Bliss end up trying to keep each other from getting in the ring, and this led to Chelsea end up drop kicking both Michin and Bliss together. So then SmackDown with the commercial, we got the whole picture-in-picture. So then as SmackDown came back from the commercial, Michin ended up sending Bliss into the corner, and then Michin ended up sending Green to the corner onto Bliss, and Michin delivered a cannonball onto both Michin and Bliss in the corner. Michin ended up going for the cover on Chelsea. Chelsea ended up kicking out. Michin then ended up attempting to kick Chelsea, but Chelsea ended up ducking, and Bliss ended up getting the boot. So all three women, Michin, Bliss, and Green, ended up kicking each other, and they all ended up going down. Green and Bliss were shown exchanging blows. Bliss ended up slapping Chelsea, and she ended up taking Chelsea down with a drop kick. And from out of nowhere, Michin ended up taking out Chelsea. So Michin ended up dropping Chelsea. She ended up going for the cover, and Bliss ended up breaking up the pin. At the end of the match, Chelsea ended up hitting Michin with the Unprettier. Bliss then ended up dropping Chelsea with the Sister Abigail, and Bliss ended up going for the cover. And there you go. Alexa Bliss ended up winning the match. Alexa Bliss now qualifies for the Women's Money in the Bank match. No surprise there. Obviously, I knew that Alexa Bliss was going to win this match. Everybody was predicting that Alexa was going to win it. So, no surprise there. But overall, solid Women's Money in the Bank qualifying match it was. And then, as SmackDown came back from the commercial, we had Fraxium, Nathan Frazier, and Axiom. They ended up taking on DIY, Johnny Organo, and Tommaso Ciampa. And this was a very good tag team match here. Fraxium is doing some of the best work since they came up to the main roster. Really was a fan of them when they were down in NXT, and they were great down there as well. You know, they were former NXT tag team champions. Without a doubt, Fraxium will be the tag team champions at some point. They deserve it. So the match got underway. We had Axiom and Ciampa start off the match, and both Axiom and Ciampa locked up. Ciampa ended up grabbing Axiom's left arm. Axiom ended up getting out of the hold and drop kicked Ciampa. Axiom then tagged in Frazier. Frazier ended up running the ropes. He ended up taking down Ciampa, sending Ciampa down to the floor. Both of Fraxium ended up taking out Gargano. Frazier then ended up sending Ciampa over the barricade. We had Axiom end up leaping through the ropes. He ended up sending Gargano into the barricade. So Axiom was going for a springboard. Gargano ended up pulling the rope, and he ended up sending Axiom to the floor. Gargano then clotheslined Axiom, and he ended up sending him to the barricade. This led to Gargano and Ciampa sitting on the barricade, and they did their whole shtick where they go. So Gargano ended up tossing Axiom back into the ring. Axiom fought back. Gargano picked up Axiom and slammed him down to the canvas, and he ended up sending him to the floor. Then as SmackDown came back from the commercial, we had Axiom and Ciampa. They were in the ring. Axiom was trying to tag in Nathan Frazier, but Ciampa stopped Axiom from making the tag. Axiom then made the tag to Frazier. Axiom and Ciampa ended up hitting the floor. Frazier ended up dropping Gargano and landed on him with a shooting star press, which looked great. Frazier then ended up going for the cover, and Gargano ended up kicking out. Frazier ended up going up to the top, and he came down as Gargano ended up moving out of the way. Gargano ended up super kicking Frazier. He then tagged in Ciampa. Ciampa ended up kicking Frazier, and he ended up going for the cover, to which Frazier kicked out. So, at the end of the match, we had Axiom end up grabbing, the arm of Gargano as Ciampa ended up grabbing Axiom. He tried to take his mask off. Ciampa was trying to, take Axiom's mask off and just, reveal his face, but that didn't happen. So Frazier ended up taking out Ciampa. Axiom ended up rolling up Gargano, and there you go. Fraxium ended up winning the match. Post-match, as Fraxium were celebrating their win, they were attacked by DIY. They were attacked by Gargano and Ciampa. And this led to the Motor City Machine Guns. Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley end up running down to save Fraxium. And pretty much that was basically that. Overall, this was a very good match. This was a very fun tag team match. Both teams had good chemistry here. And it was very enjoyable. Fraxium is doing some of the best work on the main roster here. And I hope they soon become tag team champions. You know, they deserve to be champions. And then we had Rey Fenix and Andrade backstage. Fenix ended up saying to Andrade that even though he fell from his WrestleMania moment, his next call is Money in the Bank. So pretty much that was basically that. So Fenix is, telling Andrade that he's going to win his Money in the Bank qualifying match. And then we saw Fraxium. As SmackDown came back from the commercial, they were met by the Street Profits, the tag team champions. And the Street Profits ended up saying that next week on SmackDown, Fraxium will get their shot at the tag team championships. So there you go. That's set for next week on SmackDown. Should be a very good match between both of these teams. Do I see Fraxium win the titles next week? No. I think give Fraxium some time and, build them up some more. Have them get another shot at the Street Profits somewhere down the line. And then crown them tag team champions. But they just came up to the main roster. They don't need to have the tag team titles that quick. Unless you want to pull the Motor City Machine Guns, thing where they made their debut and they had a few matches and then they became tag team champions by beating DIY. But who knows if WWE is going to go that route like they did with the Motor City Machine Guns. And then we had an interview with R-Truth. Wade Barrett was interviewing him. He was interviewing R-Truth about him being sent through a table by John Cena at the Backlash press conference, which was very funny to me when I saw that on the post-show press conference. So Truth ended up saying, Bill's pressure, but you can always depend on John Cena. He ended up saying, your time is now, hustle, loyalty, respect. He ended up saying that it's a beacon of light. Barrett then ended up telling Truth to listen to himself. Truth ended up saying that the guy at the press conference is not the John Cena he knows. He ended up saying that he doesn't want to fight John, but if he has to beat him back to his senses, he will do it. Truth ended up saying that he has already talked to Nick Aldis. So R-Truth ended up announcing that at Saturday night's main event, it's going to be him versus John Cena. And no matter what, he will walk out with his hand held high. Hustle, loyalty, and respect. So there you go. It's official for Saturday night's main event. John Cena versus R-Truth. This is a non-title match. So R-Truth wants to have Cena get back to his senses. He wants to beat Cena back to his senses. And there was a point when Backlash was over that Cena was, tearing up because the fans were chanting, "Thank you, Cena." So he kind of broke, character a little bit there. There's a video of it on social media. You can find it. And then we went backstage and we saw The Miz and Carmelo Hayes. Carmelo Hayes ended up saying that it's not over until he wins. And it's Melo over everybody. And pretty much the match ended up getting underway with Aleister Black versus Carmelo Hayes. Once again, rinse and repeat. This return for Aleister Black so far has been completely underwhelming. It's him and Carmelo Hayes and him versus The Miz. And I'm like, really? You bring Aleister Black to have him feud with Carmelo Hayes and The Miz? Really? Can we give Aleister Black some competition other than Hayes and The Miz? Like, seriously? But same old match this was. Match got underway. Both men locked up. Aleister Black ended up grabbing Carmelo Hayes' arm. And Carmelo Hayes ended up fighting back. He ended up taking down Black. So both Black and Hayes were in the corner. Black ended up going for a punch, but Hayes ended up ducking. Black then ended up taking down Hayes. They ended up going back and forth with some attempted pinfalls. Black ended up going for the Black Mass, but Hayes ducked it. Hayes leapt off the ropes, and he was met with a big boot delivered by Black. So Hayes ended up hitting the floor. Miz tossed Hayes back into the ring, and he leapt over the ropes with a big moonsault, to which he ended up taking down Aleister Black. Hayes ended up sending Black back into the ring, and he ended up going for the cover, to which Black ended up kicking out. So then, as SmackDown came back from the commercial, Hayes was on the top rope, but he was sent to the floor by a kick from Aleister Black. So we had Carmelo Hayes on the outside. The ref was beginning the 10 count. Hayes ended up being the count. Black ended up dropping Hayes, and he followed up with a kick. So Black ended up drop kicking Hayes again. Hayes rolled to the floor. Black connected with a big moonsault onto the floor onto Hayes. So Black then rolled Hayes back into the ring. Black then picked up Hayes. Hayes tried to fight Black off. He rolled up Black, but Black ended up kicking out at 2. So later on, we had Miz was up on the apron. Aleister Black ended up sending Carmelo Hayes into the Miz, sending him to the floor. Black then connected with a big knee to Hayes. Miz then ended up getting into the ring, and he started laying it out on Aleister Black, which caused the match to end in disqualification. So Miz picked up Black. Black then ended up kicking Miz with the Black Mass. Hayes then ended up attacking Black. Hayes climbed to the top rope, and he connected with a big leg to Aleister Black. So pretty much that was basically that. Match went to a disqualification. But rinse and repeat, this was. We've seen it before. Nothing special or great happened in this rematch between Black and Hayes. Like I said, Black's return has been very underwhelming, in my opinion. We need to move Aleister Black away from Carmelo Hayes and The Miz. Give Aleister Black some competition other than Carmelo Hayes and The Miz. Like, Black comes back and I'm like, this is the best thing that you got for Aleister Black's return in Hayes and The Miz? Move on. Let's move on from Aleister Black and Carmelo Hayes for Aleister Black. And then we saw Byron Saxton. Byron Saxton was backstage. He was talking to Alexa Bliss about her match win earlier in the night, qualifying for Money in the Bank. Alexa Bliss ended up telling Byron that she has to go. So Alexa Bliss then confronted Charlotte about how they were friends in NXT. But Charlotte ended up saying to Alexa that she doesn't remember that. So Julia was shown walking out of Nick Aldis's office. Nick Aldis ended up coming out, and he ended up telling Charlotte that they need to talk about Money in the Bank. Charlotte then ended up telling Alexa Bliss that she doesn't believe in her. And pretty much that was basically that. So, looks like Julia is now a part of the SmackDown roster full-time. So they broke Julia away from Roxanne Perez, which I thought that both Roxanne Perez and Julia would both come up to the main roster. But unfortunately, Julia got that full-time part on the SmackDown roster. So Roxanne Perez is still going to be doing stuff in NXT. So who knows when Roxanne's going to be called up full-time. I'd like to see Roxanne Perez full-time on the main roster. I think Roxanne Perez is ready. So then we had Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre made his way down to the ring. He had a mic in hand. McIntyre ended up saying that he heard what Priest had to say. He ended up saying that the only reason Priest is relevant is because of his feud with him. McIntyre ended up saying that Priest is obsessed with him. He ended up saying that it's jealousy. McIntyre ended up saying that he is better than Priest and would have been a Grand Slam champion at Backlash if it wasn't for Priest. McIntyre ended up saying that he has to end. He ended up accepting Priest's challenge from a video package that was aired earlier, because we got a video package from Damian Priest. So Damian Priest in the video package ended up accepting a challenge for Drew McIntyre. And at Saturday night's main event, it's going to be Drew McIntyre versus Damian Priest in a steel cage match. So McIntyre ended up accepting the challenge, so we're getting that Saturday night's main event. Another match with Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest. So then, as SmackDown came back from the commercial, we saw Jimmy Uso. Jimmy Uso was walking backstage. He ended up talking about how he will win his Money in the Bank qualifying match tonight. So we had Jimmy end up making his way out, because before SmackDown went to commercial, we saw Sikoa and Jacob Fatu and JC Mateo end up making their way to the ring. So Jimmy Uso made his way out, and then Rey Fenix. So we got the men's Triple Threat Money in the Bank qualifying match. Jimmy Uso versus Rey Fenix versus Sikoa. Very good Triple Threat Money in the Bank qualifying match this was. Sikoa ended up going right after Rey Fenix as the match got underway. Jimmy ended up hitting Sikoa with a big uppercut. Fenix and Jimmy both ended up sending Sikoa out to the floor. Fenix and Jimmy end up fighting it out. Fenix ended up grabbing Jimmy, and he ended up locking Jimmy up. Jimmy ended up fighting off Fenix with some chops. Fenix then ended up leaping off the ropes, and he connected on Jimmy, and he ended up going for the cover, to which Jimmy ended up kicking out. Jimmy then ended up nailing Fenix and ended up sending him down. Fenix got back up. Solo Sikoa ended up grabbing Jimmy's legs, and he dragged Jimmy to the floor. He ended up slamming Jimmy's head on the commentary table. Fenix then went up to the top, and he landed on both Sikoa and Jimmy Uso with a big crossbody to the outside. So Sikoa was in the ring. Fenix ended up springboarding in, and he got caught by a springboard slam by Sikoa. Solo ended up running, and he ended up sending Jimmy off the apron and into the commentary table. Solo then ended up grabbing Jimmy. He then ended up slamming him on the commentary table. So then SmackDown went to commercial. Then when SmackDown came back from the commercial, Jimmy ended up hitting the ring. He climbed up to the top. Fenix ended up getting back to his feet, and he ended up kicking Jimmy. So both Fenix and Jimmy were on the ropes. Fenix was then grabbed by Sikoa. Fenix ended up kicking Solo, and he came off the rope, and he was then hit with a super kick by Jimmy. We had Sikoa end up picking up Fenix later on, and he ended up going for the Samoan spike to Fenix, but Fenix ducked. Fenix then rolled up Sikoa, to which Solo kicked out at 1. Jimmy then super kicked Solo. Fenix and Jimmy were then exchanging blows. Fenix then connected with a drop kick and sent Jimmy face first to the canvas. So at the end of the match, Fenix was distracted by JC Mateo and Jacob Fatu. And that allowed Sikoa to hit the Samoan Spike on Fenix. So Sikoa ended up going for the cover. And there you go. Sikoa ended up winning the match. And he is qualified for the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. No surprise there. Post-match, LA Knight ended up running down. Knight ended up attacking Sikoa, JC Mateo, and Jacob Fatu. Knight had a chair in hand, and he stood on the commentary table. Nick Aldis then ended up coming out. And Nick Aldis ended up saying that SmackDown is where they settle the differences in the ring. So Nick Aldis then made a match for LA Knight to take on JC Mateo. So that was the match as SmackDown came back from the commercial. JC Mateo, aka Jeff Cobb, versus LA Knight. This was Jeff Cobb's WWE debut match. And this match was pretty bad. This was a pretty bad debut for Jeff Cobb in the ring. The match was just dragging. And the crowd was just not into it. The crowd was dead silent during this match. So the match got underway. Both men end up locking up. Knight ended up grabbing JC. So JC turned it around and tossed Knight. To which LA Knight carried this match. JC then grabbed Knight and ended up sending him down. Knight ended up trying to fight JC off, but JC ended up nailing Knight. Knight came back and applied a headlock on JC. He then tried to send JC down, but JC wouldn't move. Knight ended up running the ropes, and he was caught by JC. But Knight reversed it and slammed JC down. He ended up going for the cover, to which JC kicked out. So Knight had JC in the corner. He was delivering some right hands to JC. JC grabbed Knight as Knight ended up fighting JC off. JC ended up running the ropes, and he was sent to the canvas with a big elbow to his face. JC then ended up clobbering on Knight. He picked Knight up and hit him. So Knight then connected with a bot on JC and then bulldogged him. Sikoa distracted Knight, and that allowed JC to send Knight over the top rope and out to the floor. So then as SmackDown came back from the commercial, JC ended up slamming Knight down. He ended up going for the cover, and Knight ended up kicking out. JC then picked up Knight and connected with a belly-to-back suplex to Knight. He ended up going for the cover, and Knight ended up kicking out. So JC ended up dropping Knight with a big clothesline. He ended up going for the cover on Knight, and Knight kicked out again. We had JC end up connected with a standing moonsault later on Knight, to which Knight ended up kicking out of that. So at the end of the match, we had Knight on the apron. He took out Sikoa and Jacob Fatu with a springboard off the middle rope. Knight ended up going back in the ring, and we had JC end up catching Knight. JC ended up dropping Knight with the Tour of the Islands, and he ended up going for the cover, and there you go. JC Mateo, Jeff Cobb, ended up winning the match. Wins his WWE debut match. Overall, this match was awful. It was pretty bad. I don't know what was up with Jeff Cobb, JC Mateo tonight. And this, like I said, this was his WWE debut match, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good. Something was off with him. If you remember watching Jeff Cobb when he was Matanza back in Lucha Underground, he was good. I don't know how he was in New Japan, but if Jeff Cobb here in WWE is gonna, be this way and not get over with the crowd, then there's a problem there. But hopefully, Jeff Cobb, JC Mateo is, better in his next match showcasing. Hopefully. And then we saw Santos Escobar and Angel. Santos ended up telling Angel that he needs to go find Berto and invite him to dinner or something. Angel ended up saying that he will try to find Berto, and Santos ended up saying that Angel has been loyal since day one. So it looks like, after what we saw last week where Berto and Santos were arguing, Berto ended up leaving the ring. So it looks like Berto is trying to get away from Santos Escobar. But you saw that, look on Angel last week, like, what's going on? But it looks like maybe we're going to get a breakup of Legado del Fantasma at some point. And then we had a vignette from Shinsuke Nakamura. Holy shit, they found Shinsuke Nakamura. Where was he? So Nakamura ended up speaking in Japanese. And he directed this vignette toward LA Knight and Aleister Black. I guess Nakamura wants, to get his hands once again on LA Knight. And he wants Aleister Black. But that was that. Finally, Nakamura is back on TV. And then we saw Jade Cargill backstage. And she was confronting Tiffany Stratton. Jade Cargill ended up telling Stratton that she will win Money in the Bank and take the Women's Championship, just like Stratton did with Nia. So Stratton ended up telling Jade that as long as she is the champion, she will never be able to beat her. There you go. That was basically that. Main event. Tiffany Stratton versus Nia Jax. This is for the Women's Championship. This is a rematch. Didn't even care for this match. We've seen the match before. Match was awful, in my opinion. We need to move on from Stratton and Nia Jax. We don't need to have another rematch after what we saw tonight. Please, move on from this. Match ended up getting underway as both Stratton and Nia were circling the ring. They ended up locking up. Nia ended up shoving Stratton down, to which Stratton got back up, and Nia ended up headbutting her. Stratton then dropkicked Nia, but it did nothing to Nia. Nia didn't even go down. Nia then ended up show tackling Stratton. Stratton then started to fight back with some kicks on Nia. Stratton ended up doing a back handspring, but she ended up getting caught by Nia, and Nia ended up sending Stratton into the turnbuckle. Stratton was shown dangling over the ropes as Nia ended up nailing Stratton with a big hip attack against the ring post. So then SmackDown went to commercial. Then when SmackDown came back from the commercial, Nia ended up sending Stratton headfirst to the corner. She ended up going for a hip attack, but Stratton moved out of the way. Stratton ended up sending Nia into the ring post. Nia got back into the ring as Stratton ended up coming off the top with a big cross body, and she ended up going for the cover, and Nia ended up kicking out. So we had Naomi end up coming out. Naomi walked out, and she had red hair. She had some, new red hair and a steel chair. Jade Cargill's music ended up hitting, and Jade Cargill ended up taking out Naomi. So Jade and Naomi were fighting through the crowd. So at the end of the match, we had Nia end up leaving the ring. She ended up grabbing the Women's Championship. Nia ended up grabbing a chair as the ref had his back turned. And we had Stratton end up drop kicking the chair into Nia because the ref ended up turning his back. And so Stratton then drop kicked the chair into Nia. And Stratton ended up going up to the top. And she delivered the prettiest moonsault ever onto Nia. She ended up going for the cover. And there you go. Tiffany Stratton ended up winning the match, retaining the Women's Championship. Overall, rinse and repeat. Same old. We need to move on from Stratton and Nia. I don't want to see this again. Please, move on. But overall, SmackDown tonight decent show it was. But anyway, that's it for the SmackDown review. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoy this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and until next video, I'll see you all later.